America, land of the free, home of the attempted assassination? Yeah, that happened. Former President Donald Trump, a man who needs no introduction and probably wouldn't shut up if you tried, was almost taken out. Not by a political rival, not by a foreign power, but by a teenager named Thomas Crooks. Details are still emerging, but here's what we know. Crooks, armed and seemingly dangerous, got way too close to Trump for comfort. The Secret Service, those sunglass-wearing, earpiece-sporting heroes, intervened before any shots were fired. Thank goodness for small miracles and highly trained government employees. The nation breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the story didn't end there. It couldn't. Because now the question everyone's asking is, how does a kid get his hands on a weapon and decide to aim it at a former president? And perhaps more importantly, who the hell are his parents? This isn't just about one troubled kid. It's about responsibility, accountability, and the terrifying possibility that this could happen again. Buckle up, folks. This is going to be a bumpy ride. The feds, never ones to let a good crisis go to waste, immediately launched a full-blown investigation. They wanted answers, and they wanted them yesterday. First on their list, the parents. Because let's be honest, when a kid does something this messed up, you gotta look at where he came from. Now, the FBI, those masters of secrecy and surveillance, haven't exactly been forthcoming with details. But leaks, rumors, and the occasional heavily redacted document have given us a glimpse into their findings. What did they find in the Crooks household? Were there arsenals of weapons hidden under the floorboards? Was the family dog secretly a Russian spy? Okay, probably not that last one, but the point is, the FBI was looking for anything and everything that could shed light on young Thomas's motives, and crucially, whether his parents had any clue this was coming. Here's where things get interesting, legally speaking. Can you actually hold parents criminally responsible for the actions of their child? The answer, as with most things law-related, is it depends. See, the law, in its infinite wisdom, recognizes that kids, especially teenagers, are still developing. Their brains are basically construction zones, full of bad decisions and questionable taste in music. So simply being a bad parent, letting your kid eat nothing but Cheetos and watch reality TV all day, isn't a crime. However, there are exceptions. If a parent actively encourages their child to commit a crime, provides them with the means to do so, or turns a blind eye to blatant warning signs, then they could be facing some serious legal trouble. Think Bonnie and Clyde, but with worse fashion sense and a lot more therapy bills. Now let's talk about the difference between criminal and civil liability. Because even if Mom and Pop Crooks dodge a criminal indictment, that doesn't mean they're off the hook entirely. Criminal charges, as we all know from watching too much Law and Order, require proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a high bar to clear. Civil liability, on the other hand, is a whole other ballgame. It's like the JV team of legal proceedings. In a civil case, the plaintiff, let's say the Secret Service or even Trump himself, just has to prove their case by a preponderance of the evidence. Basically, they have to show that it's more likely than not that the parents were negligent in some way. And if they win, well, let's just say the Crooks family might have to sell their house, their car, and maybe even their prized collection of commemorative plates to cover the damages. So back to Thomas Crooks. Remember, he's a teenager. We don't know exactly how old, but old enough to know better, right? Well, the law might disagree. See, there's this whole legal concept called capacity. It basically means the ability to understand the consequences of your actions. And guess what? Teenagers, with their underdeveloped prefrontal cortexes and love of all things impulsive, don't always have the same capacity as adults. Now, this doesn't mean Crooks gets a free pass. But it does complicate things. If the prosecution wants to argue that the parents should have known better, they'll have to prove that Crooks himself was capable of understanding the gravity of what he was planning. And that, my friends, is a tough sell. So, what do the experts think? Will the Crooks parents be facing a jury of their peers anytime soon? Well, it's a mixed bag. Some legal eagles, the kind who wear $5,000 suits and have never seen the inside of a Walmart, believe that the parents should be held accountable. They argue that raising a child who attempts to assassinate a former president is, in itself, evidence of negligence. Others, however, are more cautious. They point out that there's a big difference between bad parenting and criminal negligence. Without concrete evidence that the parents knew about Crooks' plan or actively helped him, any charges would be difficult to prove. As one prominent legal scholar put it, it's a classic case of shoulda, woulda, coulda. Should the parents have seen the warning signs? Maybe. Could they have done more? Possibly. But did they actually break the law? That's a much tougher question. Here's the million-dollar question, the one that keeps the FBI up at night and the legal analysts glued to their cable news gigs. Did the parents know? Because let's be real, if Mom and Pop Crooks were sitting around the dinner table, casually discussing the best way to take out a former president, then yeah, they're going down. But if they were completely in the dark, if this was a total shock, a bolt from the blue, then the case against them becomes a whole lot weaker. Proving knowledge, intent, that's the holy grail for prosecutors. They need to show that the parents weren't just oblivious, they were willfully blind, that they ignored red flags, dismissed warning signs, maybe even enabled their son's descent into this dangerous obsession. It's a tough case to make. But hey, that's what search warrants, interrogations, and those creepy surveillance vans are for, right? Section 8. Cooperation versus culpability. How the Crooks' actions impact the case. Now here's where things get really interesting. The Crooks family, or at least their lawyer, claims they had no idea this was coming. They're portraying themselves as victims, blindsided by their son's actions, and they're cooperating. Oh, are they cooperating? They're handing over diaries, laptops, maybe even those embarrassing childhood photos that make you question your parents' judgment. Now, you might think, well, that proves they're innocent, right? Not so fast. See, cooperation can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it makes them look less suspicious, like they've got nothing to hide. But on the other hand, it gives the FBI a treasure trove of information to sift through. Every email, every text message, every Google search could contain a clue, a hint, a smoking gun that blows their whole "we had no idea" defense out of the water. Section 9. A weak case. The challenges of proving parental responsibility. So let's cut to the chase. Is the case against the Crooks parents strong? Honestly, not really. It's built on a foundation of speculation, conjecture, and a whole lot of what-ifs. Proving that they knew about their son's plan, that they actively helped him, or that they were so negligent in their parenting that they should be held criminally responsible, that's a tall order. It would require mountains of evidence, airtight arguments, and maybe a little bit of legal magic. Of course, stranger things have happened. Juries are unpredictable, evidence can be misinterpreted, and sometimes, just sometimes, justice prevails against all odds. But if I were a betting man, and I'm not, because gambling is a dangerous addiction, I wouldn't put my money on the prosecution in this case. Section 10. Justice for whom? The potential for civil litigation against the Crooks family. Okay, so maybe the Crooks parents won't be facing criminal charges, but that doesn't mean they're off the hook entirely. Remember that whole civil liability thing we talked about? Yeah, that's where things could get really messy. See, in the eyes of the law, the Secret Service has a duty to protect the president, even a former one. And they take that duty very seriously. So if they can argue that the Crooks parents' negligence, even if it wasn't criminal, contributed to the attempt on Trump's life, well, they could be facing a lawsuit that would make their heads spin. And let's not forget about Trump himself. The man loves a good lawsuit more than he loves tweeting. He could easily decide to sue the Crooks family for emotional distress, mental anguish, or maybe even damage to his brand. Because let's be honest, having a teenager try to assassinate you doesn't exactly scream stable genius. Section 11. The investigation continues. Unanswered questions and the search for closure. So where do we go from here? The investigation is ongoing, the FBI is still digging, and the legal experts are still arguing on cable news. There are still more questions than answers. What exactly motivated Thomas Crooks? Was he influenced by online extremism, mental illness, Or just a really bad case of teenage angst? Did his parents truly have no idea what he was planning, or are they hiding something? And what about the Secret Service? Could they have done more to prevent this, or did they handle it by the book? These are questions that demand answers, not just for the sake of justice, but for the sake of our collective sanity. Because if we can't understand how and why something like this could happen, then how can we ever hope to prevent it from happening again? The search for answers, for closure, for some semblance of understanding, continues. And until we find it, the shadow of this event, this chilling reminder of our own vulnerability, will continue to loom large.